to the Shepherd Podcast. Thank you for tuning in today and watching. And if you like what you see today, please remember to like, share, or subscribe so that other people can benefit from the content as well. We've had a great time getting to know people in the congregation, congregational leaders, staff, members, and today I'm able to invite somebody in who can tell us about a new congregation that he is starting and just give us a little more background on him. And so I'd like to welcome Pastor Philip Doublestein as my guest today. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me. It's good to see you all.
Yeah. Well, thanks for coming in today to do this. And you are working on a brand new church, a new LCMS church, southeast side of town, Brooks Church. And we'll get into that more later, but you want to, just as we get going so people kind of know, what the relevance is of bringing you on today and what you're doing, just an overview of Brooks Church and what you're doing, and then we can get into that a little more later in detail.
Sure. So this is a bit of a homecoming for me. I'd imagine that some people who are tuning in recognize my last name. I was baptized here at Shepherd of the Hills back in 1988. And then when my parents moved out to Helotes, we transferred over to Crown of Life Lutheran Church. But my sister went to K through 4 here at Shepherd.
That's right.
And so my parents have told me some last names of some of you who are tuning in. So I think that bringing me back to San Antonio, which was a call made by God, and then Eli Prieto, Pastor Prieto, and Carlos and the link board I'm a native, and so it makes sense to have a person who knows the culture to come back and plant churches.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Very good. Okay, so we'll talk about the church planting a little bit. You can fill us in on what that is, but you got into your biography. You have roots and connections here at Shepherd of the Hills, so you want to tell us a little bit more, an overview of your time growing up in San Antonio. I mean, you were here your whole upbringing?
That's right. Yep. Yeah, born and raised. So born at Methodist Hospital in the medical center, and after my parents moved out to Helotes, went to Helotes Elementary, Stinson Middle School, O'Connor High School, and when I graduated in 2006, then I went to Concordia University in Chicago. It was either Austin or Chicago, and Austin was still off of their I-35 campus, which I think is the one you went to, right?
That's where I went.
And Chicago was kind of a 6 and 1/2 dozen the other, because Austin was an hour and a half away from where my parents were, but Chicago was only about 3 hours away from where the rest of my family lived, in around Grand Rapids, Michigan. So it was either stick around Texas or see the world a little bit, and I kind of chose to see the world, but also they had a good language department at Concordia, Chicago at that time. So that's what I studied, theological languages, and after you study theological languages, there's pretty much only one thing that you can do, which is go to the seminary, and so that was the next thing in line, and so I graduated there in 2015.
Do you keep up with the languages?
I do. I am better with Latin and Greek than I am with Hebrew, but I still dive into the Hebrew once in a while, just so that I remember how to read it.
Good for you. Yeah, I remember learning those things, and if you don't use it, you lose it.
That's right.
So,
and Hebrew is so foreign that you lose it pretty quick.
Yeah.
I used to be able to sight read it. I took an independent study thing, but after I passed that and got along, I lost it pretty quick. So the forms are still all there, but the vocabulary is not quite so great anymore.
Yeah, that's okay. That's what interlinear Bibles and blueletterbible.com are for.
That's right. Yep. Logos software.
Yes, Logos software too. Okay, so when you went to college, you majored in the biblical languages?
That's right. Yep.
Okay, so at that point you already knew that you wanted to be a pastor, right?
That's correct. Yep.
Okay. So can you tell us that journey how did God communicate to you that this is where He wanted to lead you?
Sure. Well, I often say that you can over-spiritualize it and you can under-spiritualize it. And I usually under-spiritualize it, so today I'm going to try to mix them both. when I was in 7th grade, my grandma sort of planted that seed. Hey, you'd be good at this, and that was the seed against which I rebelled a little bit. Didn't really want to be a pastor, but since it was always in the back of my mind, when I was a senior in high school, Pastor Eli Prieto mentored me. So I got to do an independent study mentorship through my school, and I got to follow him around and help him do some things as well. And so that was really what changed my mind and why I went to Concordia Chicago. That was sort of his recommendation. But I went there to study business. But my very first accounting class, my professor assigned 95 pages in our accounting textbook. And I got through about 15 pages, and I marched from the dorm to the academic advising office and said, change my major to anything but this. And I'd already made friends because I was in the pre-sem program, so I was already taking Greek. And I really liked the professor and decided to study languages because I'd already taken 4 years of Latin in high school.
Okay.
And so that would have basically exempted me and counted for the credits that I needed in college of Latin. But I ended up taking Latin anyway in college too, so
okay.
I like that language. So
okay.
Yeah. And from there, it was just more and more Christian friends, guys who I knew and were friends with who were going into the seminary. And so you could say that God was working through not only my mentorship experiences and teachers and things, but also through my peers to assure me that my personality was cut out for being a pastor, which I wasn't quite convinced of for a very long time. So,
okay. What kind of personality do you need to be a pastor, by the way? I wonder if mine is.
Yeah, I don't know. But there was definitely a rebellious vein that ran through my high school years that I thought would disqualify me. But turns out some people find it refreshing. We'll see if that continues to be the case.
Yeah, well, God needs all kinds of people, and sometimes it's the people who are rebellious in high school who can relate to the people who are rebellious in high school
right.
later on, so God uses all that.
Yep.
Yeah, great. Okay, so this is your second call as a pastor, right?
That's correct. Yep.
So first call out of seminary was Peoria, Illinois?
That's right, Caterpillar territory.
Caterpillar territory.
Yeah, so I was at Redeemer Lutheran Church in Peoria. That's where I was first called and ordained, and I served there as their youth and young adult pastor. But before I got there, the senior pastor who created my position took another call, and we didn't have a senior pastor for my first 3 years that I was there. So it was sort of any duties as assigned. It was there that I was able to really grow. I had another associate pastor who had a few more years experience, and he's now in Spring, Texas, a guy by the name of Pastor Ted Benson.
Oh, Ted was a classmate of mine.
Was he?
Yeah.
And so he was there at Redeemer Peoria
That's
with
right.
me.
Yes.
Now he and I both are in Texas, and yeah, it was a really great growing experience, and I think that I was more and more convinced that high school ministry is a really important ministry in the church. A lot of things center around sort of that junior high and high school ministry that brings life to the church, brings interest to the church, and really God had a lot of success through the high school ministry there. A lot of healing can happen through high school ministry. I think, I was the 5th youth minister in 3 years when I got there. And so there was a lot of healing that needed to happen. That with the no senior pastor for a long time. But I think by the time I left, I prayed God that I left it in a good condition. And that was kind of one of the things that freed me up to explore what I'm doing now.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Was that your primary duty, was youth ministry there?
That's correct. Yep.
Yeah, okay.
So I taught and organized confirmation alongside the children's ministry director. We sort of tag teamed that, and then high school was my primary focus. But like I said, since we didn't have a senior pastor for a long time, I also went to all the elders meetings and church council meetings and that sort of thing. So I was doing all that sort of thing, but the way that my performance was measured was the high school ministry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. And then one day out of the blue, did you get a call from Eli Prieto, or how did it happen that you were doing ministry in Peoria and then all of a sudden you're in San Antonio planting a church? How did we get to that point?
That was out of the clear blue sky.
Yeah.
So actually, Pastor Prieto and I have maintained our friendship this whole time. Sometimes we had gone a while without talking, but every time I came back to San Antonio, I tried to make connection with him. And he's actually the one who married my wife and I.
Oh, cool.
And so it was the day after Christmas. We were driving back from my wife's grandparents' house in St. Louis, and he texted me to say Merry Christmas, and then he called me, and we talked almost the entire 2.5-hour drive from St. Louis to Peoria about what he was trying to do with Link and where I would fit in. At that time, they were considering one other pastor to call, and so it wasn't certain that the call would go to me, but he wanted to make sure that I was open to this, or kind of test the waters for it. So as things tend to do when you're trying to start new things, they progressed a bit slowly, and it wasn't until the end of April that I came down for an interview. And then when I was on the National Youth Gathering trip in 2019, my call documents came in the mail, and so when I came home, I found out that I had received that call and deliberated until August. So, yeah.
Had you considered church planting before?
I always thought that it would be a fun sort of experiment. I like to try new things, and as I told you guys already, I like to be a bit rebellious, and so trying new things and sort of bucking trends and finding new trends has always been interesting for me. And so I always thought that I wanted to be a church planter, but I never got in with sort of the church planting track that they have at the seminary. I just went straight MDiv route. But it's always been something that's interested me, something that I've read a lot about. And so having this opportunity and an opportunity to work with the guy who kind of opened my eyes to the ministry as well were the two assuring points of accepting this call.
Yeah. That's really cool. That's neat how things have come full circle in your life, and how a relationship that was very important to you is taken on a new dimension. And yeah, that's great. I'm just so excited that you're here. The people at Shepherd of the Hills have a heart for church planting. We've been a part of 2 different church plants, and now to be able to partner with other churches. We've been supporting Link since it began. What has it been, 10 years ago?
Yeah, maybe more than that.
Yeah, and I know that it's been a long journey for Link to get to this point, to be able to establish a new church. But as we looked at data before, there's just so many people to reach in San Antonio,
right? And
we're so underserved by LCMS churches. We could have a lot more of a presence, and this is going to be a great move in that direction.
Yeah.
So you were brought in to start a church from scratch, and to do so in partnership with different LCMS churches in the area. So how do you even get started with that? When you first came to town, what was your to-do list? Where do you start?
That's a good question. I'm still trying to figure out what's on that to-do list.
Yeah.
The first thing to do was to pick a place. So Link has followed this a place, or a person, place, and then plan. So the first thing was to get me here. And once I came here, then it was sort of, okay, where do we want to plant? And driving around and kind of knowing the area, although I'd been gone for over 10 years at that point, 14 almost, I think, I wasn't as familiar, since a lot has changed in 14 years. But what we noticed was a lot of churches that we had talked to in San Antonio were looking to plant north. We have churches in New Braunfels, right? Some of the churches in Austin are starting to look south as the cities sort of grow together. And so when we got here, we were looking at a couple different places: the Pearl, City Base, and then out by UTSA. And we kept on coming back to everybody seems to want to go north or north and west or northeast, and nobody's going south. Right. And so we kind of pulled a Kansas City shuffle. While everybody looks one way, we're going to go the other way. And so Brooks is an area that's been growing. Developers are spending a lot of money there. There's not enough retail space. There's a lot of people who want desperately for this to be a place where they can live. And so we prayed about it, and we just kind of decided that this is where God was leading us to plant. Mm-hmm. So traditionally, the model that everybody's been telling me is the way to go is a mother church sends a group of people and a large sum of money to a location to plant a church. I was at the Exponential Conference a few months ago, and I was I was talking with one of the presenters, and I essentially told him that I don't have either of those things, a large sum of money or a group of people who want to come with me. And he said, "Oh, well, I feel sorry for you." And that got me down a little bit, I suppose. But we're up to meeting the challenge. I think we're looking at different things now, and perhaps we have an opportunity to talk about that too. But right now, it's about finding our own model. It's about realizing that if this is God's will, then He's going to bless it, and we're going to try to follow Him boldly. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Great. So, person, place, plan.
That's right.
So you're the person, the Brooks city-based area is the place. What can you tell our audience about the plan? I know it's still a work in progress, but what can you share at this point?
Sure. So we've sort of gone through a couple different plans on our way to what we're doing now. The one plan was I moved to the Brooks area with my wife, and then we start having meetings in our house. Well, that's all well and good, but until you're established and you have friends who live in the area, you can't really have meetings in your house if you don't have anybody. The good news is that I have a lot of former friends. They are current friends, but they're friends before I moved back here, who are supportive of this ministry, people who are coming to our meetings and who are invested in what we're doing down at Brooks, even though they don't live in that area. So we do have a small group of about 12 to 14 people who are meeting with me, and we're just now turning the corner to doing some launch team training, more Bible study based stuff, Q&A. Whereas since February, we've been doing kind of every other week we'd meet and we'd talk about sort of the vision of this new church. So where do we want to go from there? That's where we are right now. The model has been, let's see if we can get the area congregations to act as one mother church. So you and four of the other area churches, we've all been sort of meeting together to talk about church planting and to allow sort of the church planting urges to be funneled through what I'm doing at Brooks. And we've had some success. The support is important, and the encouragement is wonderful. But when it comes to where the rubber hits the road, we've found that is going to take a very, very long time to have 5 churches act as one mother church, and to do so in a really healthy way. So what we're working on right now is a new funding and community engagement model. And if we have time to talk about that, I'd love to let you in on it.
Please, I'd love for our people to hear all about it.
Cool. So a few weeks ago, actually probably about a month ago, my wife and I were driving around in Brooks, and we realized that they didn't have enough retail space for the people who were there. The line at Starbucks was 30 cars long. I knew this beforehand, but I'm familiar with the manager at the Whataburger that's down at Brooks, and it's the highest grossing Whataburger in the San Antonio area. Just a ton of people who need that retail stuff, and that is the best location for miles south. So people come all the way up 37 to go here. People from all around the south side go there because there's a Sam's, a Walmart, there's a Target, there's everything. And so we were thinking, what could we do to bring some awareness to our church plant in this community? What can we do to serve this community? And the thing we kept on coming back to time and time again was a coffee shop. There is no local coffee at Brooks. There is the sort of South Side staple, which is about 15 minutes away from Brooks for local coffee. And there is a new brewery going in at the old Brooks base chapel.
Wow.
And so a local coffee place, a local brewery, and there are a ton of young people, young professionals and young students that are moving down there because there's affordable housing, but it's new, it's nice, it's 7 minutes from downtown, and University of Incarnate Word's Medical School is down there. So all these things and all these businesses moving in, we thought a coffee shop would be a great thing to start. But to get into a coffee shop, we might need $150,000 to $250,000, which is what you usually need in order to start a church. We don't have that kind of money at Link, and especially with this COVID stuff, it's kind of a bad time to go knocking on doors and asking usually. So we thought, why don't we start a coffee truck? And so we started, my wife and I, researching this and found out through a bunch of different conversations that we had with people from Peoria, Illinois, people from here in town, all over the place, that we could get into the business for $55,000. And if we can fundraise that amount of money, we can turn a profit almost immediately, which would mean that my salary would no longer be a burden for the people at Brooks. We would have a much more sustainable ministry. We would be able to pop up at places around the community so that we can minister to them, so we can make them aware of the church, so that we can love on people and be aware of the people who are in the community, as well as make people in the area congregations, the LCMS congregations, aware of what we're doing, because we can come out and show you what we're doing and demonstrate sort of one-on-one with you guys what we do day in and day out. And so we're really excited about this. We're writing the business plan right now. My wife and I are doing that, and we hope to open this by the same time that the brewery opens, which is in the fall. And with this COVID era, we don't know what the fall means, right? The dates are kind of up in the air.
Yeah, fall could be December, January.
Right, yeah. But we do want to be open when the brewery opens, because most trends say that when a local brewery opens, that's when the cool companies come down. That's when the cool businesses start opening. The hyper-local stuff starts opening. And so we want to be the first ones who are there to serve the community and provide that sort of third space, even though it's a truck.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a novel approach. As I shared with you at our meeting the other day with the pastors group, there's a lot of great ideas that are going into this, and so it'll be really neat to see how things continue to develop. But you guys are definitely thinking through all the angles, from the funding to how are we a presence in the community, even that whole part about being mobile, and you can come to the different supporting churches and have a presence there and gain support that way. So there's a whole lot going on there.
Well, and Pastor Chris, let me tell you, the one thing that I'm the most excited about with starting a coffee truck is that it's also reproducible. So our source, somebody who opened a coffee truck in Peoria that we were friends with, that I met with, she wanted to open up a coffee shop, and she didn't have the funds. So after 1 year of operating this coffee truck, she was able to lease and outfit a space. And so they have a permanent brick and mortar spot and it's actually called The Spot, The Spot Coffee in Peoria. And so that's kind of the model that we hope to follow, is after a year, 18 months, to have our own place where everybody's aware of us. Now we become sort of an institution, and we have a space to worship as well. And we can repurpose that coffee truck into whatever else we might need to send that mission to another location in San Antonio. Mm-hmm. Because I wasn't called here just to plant one church. I was called here to plant a church that plants churches. Right. And so this is more of a long-term vision than just a kind of a one and done thing. And that's what I'm really excited about.
Okay. Just thinking down the road, so you've got the coffee truck, you've got the mobile ministry. Where does worship take place, and what does that look like?
So I've got one or two feelers out right now. We were thinking that we would be in the schools. Right now, since that's kind of up in the air, I've asked the owner of the gym that I go to. It's a kind of a big open CrossFit type gym, and so there are no machines in that big area. And it would be a great place to worship, especially temporarily, provide some exposure for the gym, but also benefit us too. Mm-hmm. So that's one idea. Another idea that I haven't approached yet would be at that brewery that's taking over that chapel.
It's a chapel.
Right, it's a chapel. And I would imagine they're probably not slinging beer at 8 o'clock in the morning on Sundays.
Yeah.
So we'd like to do something that's easy for people at Brooks to get to, and the important thing is that it is at Brooks, which has some definite parameters. So we want to be a church that is at Brooks, not just ambiguously on the south side.
Yeah, you're very narrow in your focus. Yep. So, well, this is really exciting. People listening, watching, I'm sure many of them are getting excited about it too. How can the people of Shepherd of the Hills, or our viewership beyond that, how can they support you? How can they encourage you? What can we do to help?
Well, Chris, I don't want to downplay this, and I don't want to just say it and move on, but certainly prayer. This whole time that I've been here since September, we've been praying about how to engage the community. So what community are we going to be in? Once God sort of opened the door for that, how are we going to build connections? How are we going to stay sustainable? How are we actually going to get this up off the ground? And God is answering prayers in this way, and so I'd invite you to pray for Brooks Church, and I think we're going to call it Brooks Coffee too. So Brooks Church and Brooks Coffee. That way you guys can remember how to pray. Certainly pray for Link and the ministry that's going on there too. But above that too, or I suppose beyond that too, it would be, if you can help in any way financially, the less money that we have to take out as a loan, the faster we can become profitable, and the faster we're profitable, the faster we can find a space as well. And so that's the ultimate goal, because once we find a space, then we can start figuring out, okay, what's next? Where is the next church plant going to be? How can we get that? How can we become plugged into that area too? So for 20% of what it usually costs to plant a church, which is about $250,000 plus 50 people, for 20% of that, we can start a church, and we can start a church that starts churches. Mm-hmm. And so if there's any sort of extra that your people have, you can go onto our Link website, which is lincsa.org, and donate now, or you can give me a call, shoot me an email. We are going to have a GoFundMe up and running soon. It's not up and running yet because we don't have our business plan quite finished, but look for that in the next couple of weeks as well.
Well, this is really exciting. People listening, I'm sure will definitely want to be praying for you. There may be some who can contribute, as you've talked about. There may even be people who live on that part of town and have not really gotten connected with the church, but they're watching online. So we'll put your contact information on the screen so people can contact you directly. If
please do. We'd love to have a conversation with you.
Yeah, great. Well, you've told us a lot about what you're doing, which is really great. A little more about you. Tell us about your family, please.
Sure. My wife and I met in St. Louis, and we were married 51 weeks later. And that was in August of 2015 when we were married. And we have a 2.5-year-old named Wyatt and a 1-month-old named Augustin, but he goes by Gus. That way we keep it easy. So Wyatt and Gus, and yeah, we're doing well. We just moved to the South Side about 2 months ago, so we're Southsiders now.
Yeah,
which is fun.
Yeah.
Yep.
Southsiders are usually proud to be Southsiders.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep. And my wife works at San Antonio Shoemakers, excuse me. So SAS, and she works in their marketing department. So.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
So a 1-month-old, Gus.
Mm-hmm.
So what are you learning about life with 2 kids so far?
You didn't prep me for that question. What am I learning about life with 2 kids? It's more difficult than 1 kid. But aside from that, it's very similar to our experience with our first child, except that our toddler keeps us grounded in reality because he goes to daycare still, so we know at least when the weekends are because he's home. So we don't get lost in what day is it.
And sometimes when you have a brand new baby, you do lose what day
Right,
it is.
yep,
Yeah, very good. Well, that's really exciting, and
Yeah.
congratulations to you and your family on the new addition.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
Yeah. So last one I had is, what do you do for fun? I know you work out because you talked about the gym, but what do you do for fun?
So working out right now is kind of like work because it's right at Brooks, and I'm making some really great connections. Have a few friends there already, and that's what I do to keep centered. It's not exactly what I do for fun because it's sometimes very miserable. But I like to ride my motorcycle. I love to scuba dive. I don't get to do that very often. I love to play my drums, but those are not set up, and even if they were set up, the baby sleeps a lot, and I probably wouldn't be allowed to play. But yeah, my wife says that I am a retiree with a full-time job, which means that kind of I get into a whole bunch of stuff. I like to garden. I like to brew beer. I like to play music. All that sort of thing. Yeah.
A retiree with a full-time job.
Yeah.
And a rebel at that.
Right, yeah. Yeah, I don't know what God was thinking. But he's a wise one, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Is there anything I didn't ask about that you want to share before we wrap up?
I don't think so. I just really want to thank you guys for tuning in and for listening as long as you did, if you made it all the way to the end here, and thank you for letting me be on to talk to you guys.
Yeah, thank you, Pastor Philip, for being our guest today. God bless you in the work that you are doing. It will be really great to be able to see Brooks Church as it develops, and I know God has wonderful things in store.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And thank you all for watching us. I hope that you enjoyed the interview. I know that you did. And we enjoy being able to bring these to you. So please tune in next time. And take care of yourself. Stay safe. The Lord's blessings to each of you.